To Mentalk Ubuntu podcast. We are thrilled to introduce our guest this episode, Pullie, who works in mental health and lives with a passion for supporting others. This passion led to the founding of Empowerment Heroes, an organization which works with survivors of domestic abuse to heal, educate, and empower them to live their best lives. Many of us heard about domestic abuse more during lockdown and have opinions, experiences, and insights on this important conversation topic. And it is an important conversation to have. That said, Puli, it's a pleasure to finally have you here. Please tell us about your story and journey.
Hi, thank you for having me. Well, my story, I think, really is coming to know now, knowing what I know now, it doesn't seem very special because a lot of people seem to have some sort of experience with abuse, and oftentimes we don't even realize that we are in that situation. So, how Empowerment Heroes was born was that I found myself in a women and children's refuge with a 3-month-old baby and a teenager. And I was like, how did I get here? You know? And it was a very, very lonely place to be because I never knew anybody that had been in that experience, that had gone through that before. And I didn't know who or how to reach out to anybody. And in that moment, I just needed somebody that would say to me, you know what? There's light at the end of the tunnel. And that day I decided that when I get myself together, I'm going to be there for somebody else. And that's how Empowerment Heroes was born. So through my own pain and trauma, I birthed Empowerment Heroes. Yeah.
Wow, phenomenal. Could you please share as well the lead up to that?
Yeah, I mean,
Perhaps
I think.
for the listener, whether you're from the UK, how you came,
All
all
right,
that
okay.
stuff.
Well, I was born in Botswana, raised in Holland, and then I moved to the UK 19 years ago. When you're young and you fall in love, or you think it's love, and then you find yourself accepting things that you shouldn't, and then you don't even realize it's like a web. Before you realize, you're already in very deep. And the truth is that abuse is something that people don't talk about. One, because it's a taboo subject. Two, there's so much stigma attached to it. And three, I think that people don't really understand what abuse is. And at the time, I'm sure it's still the case now, because I hear a lot of the ladies that I work with, even men, say that, what will people say? And particularly if you're a Christian, the church, the thing that you always hear is, oh, there's nothing that God cannot do. Let's commit it to God in prayer. And the stigma of being a divorcee almost seems to be worse than living in actual pain, because most people think, oh well, what will people say? And if especially for women, oh, what did you do? You must have done something for your husband to be like that, or you must have done something for the marriage to end. It's never that it didn't work out, or we were not meant to be, or whatever. It's always, what has the woman done to be in that position? So there's always a lot of things that you find yourself, and you ask yourself afterwards, like, how did I get here? And then for me personally, it was just one of those things that you kind of accept things because you think that that's normal, but deep down you always know, we always know. Because the truth, I always tell my customers or my clients that the truth lies in within. Nobody's going to come and tell you from outside what you need to know, because you already know. We just don't like to accept it. And then it just got to a point where I can't live like this, and I don't want my children to think that this is normal. I don't want my son to think that this is how you treat a woman. I don't want my daughter to think that this is how a man treats you. So at that time, I just decided, no, enough is enough. And I was pregnant, because my ex was not physically abusive. He was very abusive emotionally. So I was pregnant. I had lost a lot of weight. I had a stressful pregnancy because of it. And I just decided that, you know what, I'm not going to do this. So it was just a matter of like figuring out. I knew that this is not it, but then it's, where do I go from here? And it's very easy knowing what I know now. But at the time, I didn't know. Where do you go to ask for help? Who do you even go to, And if you go to your pastor, he'll tell you, oh, let's just pray, it will be all right. If you talk to other people, oh, every marriage goes through its ups and downs, or they will tell you all men are the same. So where do you go for sound, healthy advice that can help you to filter out the truths and the lies in every circumstance? So I just decided that this was not going to be it for me. And that's how my journey started, really.
Wow, I mean, that's such a powerful introduction to the topic. Thank you very much for really sharing your personal experience on that. Ooh, incredible. I feel almost, especially considering how far it seems that you've come, I think it leads beautifully, obviously, into the topic for today, where we're going to be discussing abuse and mental health. I think, but first, I feel like it's really important to ask if on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1, say, being low and 10 being super high and up in the clouds, where would you say you are mentally at the moment?
Now, definitely, I would say that I'm a 10. And the reason why I say that is that obviously I started off, let's say, at a 2. And then for me, the most important thing is that you cannot change what you don't accept. So acceptance is always the first key to healing or to improving one's life. And I don't like the word victim, because I feel that that's a very oppressive word. So I now can boldly say that, I am a survivor of domestic abuse and I made it through. So can anybody else. And I think that statement on its own is very empowering, and it does wonders for your mental state as an individual, whether you're male or female. We've all been through stuff, but we're not taught to accept our struggles. Society expects us to boast about the good, but we're never allowed to boast about the bad and how we overcame the bad, and then because of that, we find ourselves feeling trapped. I don't know, I hope I'm making sense.
Definitely. And again, we really do appreciate you coming on Mentalk podcast and sharing your experience, your journey, which sounds like a heavy, loaded journey, but at the end of that, you've captivated me definitely in terms of having that inspiration to obviously know better, see better, and also ensure that perspective is also reflected with your children. I'm compelled to ask you, in terms of such relationships, when you were much younger, how did you see, or what kind of examples did you have from adolescent girl all the way through to coming to early teenage years? What was the relationship, people around, like family and that, to kind of aspire to, or was that the norm, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, definitely. It makes a lot of sense. And the truth of the matter is that, I grew up within a very loving family. My mom got remarried. Well, I don't call him my dad. My stepdad is my dad. Brought us up and loved us. I was brought up in a family full of love. I mean, even if I look back at the way that my uncles treated their wives, or I've never ever witnessed abuse in that form, lying. And I think that's why it's very important that we teach our children the good and the bad and everything in life, because sometimes some things are very easy to identify and others are not so easy to identify. So for me, I grew up in a loving family. Mom gets home, or whoever, dad kisses mom. There's equal division of labor within the household. I can't fault my parents in any way for that, because that I was just brought up really, really in a family full of love. Even now, if anything happens, do I tell mom first or do I tell dad? Depending on how bad it is, I know who to tell first. So we've always had a very open relationship with my parents, and that is all of our siblings. So for me, that wasn't the case. And that's why I think that I said before that we always know the truth, but for whatever social pressures, we sometimes just decide to not, I knew there were already warning signs from the very beginning, but then you just go and hope for the best, for lack of a better term. Do you know what I mean? But you always know when something is right and when something is off. So for me, I knew that this wasn't right. This wasn't the kind of healthy relationship or the kind of love I wanted. But ask me why, I stayed. And that's why I think it's very, very important that as parents, as uncles, as aunties, guardians, we teach our children, young ones, the importance of self-worth, especially in the climate that we live in. We think that self-worth is how pretty you are, and that's how long your hair is, or all those superficial things. But if you know your worth as an individual, when somebody else comes and tells you the opposite, you know that that's a lie. And I think that is one of the things that sometimes we miss as parents in teaching or instilling in our children.
On the back of that, you said something that really stuck out to me. And I'm intrigued to kind of find out, how do you educate and ensure that you're always teaching your children and equipping them with the right tools for them to know their worth in that regards?
My eldest is a teenager. He's 16 years old. And we have frank conversations. Sometimes he tells me things I'm thinking, oh my God, do I really want to hear this? But I prefer that. No matter how hard it is, I prefer to know the truth and to be open. And sometimes, honestly, I have to sit on my hands and just count backwards to 10. But it's about a willingness to learn, because I don't know everything. And the way I was brought up is very different than how I'm raising him. So I'm trying very, very hard to be a parent, but also be a learner. So I know from my own experiences, I use that, and also other people's experiences. And we sit down and have conversations. And if I see something that I think is a bit off, I call him and we talk about it. He feels, oh, there she goes again. But the good thing with that is that sometimes he comes back and says, oh, Mom, when you said, yeah, you were right. Or, Mom. And sometimes he will tell me stuff that I didn't even recognize in myself. And then, I think that is key. You have to be willing to learn as much as you are trying to impart your knowledge onto your children.
Yeah, I think honesty with children is something we've spoken about in the past on the podcast. And I think there's that fine balance between let your child be a child. And then obviously there's certain points where, say, they hit the teenage years. All of us go through it. It's your own sort of rite of passage. And if you aren't visible, if you're not an ear at that time, they will find someone else. And often it's people who either don't know or might not have their best interest. And I think that suggestion, that advice that you've just given is really, really important. I think especially in certain contexts where perhaps we lean too heavily on culture, and although culture is good and it's solid, we have to acknowledge the world we're in is very different, and the access to information is very different, and it can be scary, and children are still children. They need someone to help them navigate all these things. So I think that's really sound advice. I think tied to that, I would be curious to know, having experienced what you have, and obviously having children and giving advice, and also with your work, which we'll get into slightly later. When you look back, what advice would you have, or would you give to, say, your younger self when you were perhaps either in your situation for those years or in the lead up to it, like that maybe could have changed things, or maybe just would have made a difference?
Definitely, if it feels, always go with your gut feeling. If it doesn't feel right, then it most probably isn't right. Confusion is always a no. The truth is that energy doesn't lie. So if you are giving me an off energy, that alone is enough. That's already telling me more than enough. And the truth is that people always show us, they always tell us who they are, or it's our unwillingness to accept what somebody's saying or what that energy is saying. So definitely for me is always go for your gut feeling and don't doubt your gut feeling, because that makes a big difference. Like I said to you guys, I always knew that this is not it, but I don't know who I felt I had to prove something to, or I just, and then you stay. And for a long, long time, my dad never ever made me feel any different than my brothers or sisters, never. If anything, they always say that I'm his favorite. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't that I was brought up to made feel any different, but I always had this thing that I wanted all my kids to have the same dad. That was just a thing. And I think that was kind of detrimental to my mental state. because I put up with a lot of rubbish that I shouldn't have for all the wrong reasons.
I mean, I want to say there's someone probably out there listening who might find themselves in that situation. And there were two, for me, gut punch questions that you posed to yourself as you were recalling your experience. The first being, how did I get here? And where do I go? But also it's for anything, for help, for support, for information, and not just, as they say, put it to God or anything like that, or pray on it. Those really paint a picture for where you were at in that moment. And so I'm sort of curious, when you thought about it and how you got there, were there things that you feel like you perhaps could have done differently? So when you feel it in your gut, when you know this doesn't feel quite right, this isn't what you saw modeled when you were growing up, do you speak up about it? Do you go to somewhere? Do you recommend couples therapy? I'm trying to sort of figure out what are the steps someone could take if they're finding themselves in that situation, or they're hoping to avoid that situation occurring again. And ask if someone's asking themselves, how did I get here today? I'm sort of trying to see how we can support them with bridging the gap.
No, definitely. I think, first of all, I think that the first thing is that we have to realize that we are not compatible with everybody, whether that's on emotional level, whether that's friendship, that is sexually, that is a partnership. So you have to look for somebody that you're compatible with. And by that, I don't mean that you all have to like the same food, you have to like the same music. No, but fundamentally, you have to be on the same wavelength. That I think is very, very important. And I think that gets missed out in upbringing and teaching youngsters about finding life partners. And oftentimes it's, okay, well, he's a Christian, you're a Christian, okay, that's it. Or she's Botswana, he's from Botswana, let's make it happen. No, that doesn't mean anything. Fundamentally, what is it about that person that draws you to them? What is it that you can say, well, this is the thing I admire the most about this person? Those are first and foremost things that we ought to teach youngsters. We ought to teach ourselves, even as grown-up, whether it's about just friendships. Because whether we like it or not, the people that we spend the most time with impact us mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. So if we are not taught how to choose or how to detect warning signs in a life partner, then you're setting up yourself up for failure.
It's intriguing you say that, because again, if we have a look at the holistic overview of some relationships are how, like, early days, you're both intertwined in each other. And then as it goes on, you get very comfortable. And then it passes this significant honeymoon period. And this period of where either the two people kind of fly or one person particularly changes and you start seeing these red flags. And then it goes from a healthy relationship to an unhealthy relationship. And by the sounds of it, speaking about yourself, it was also the case of you also made sacrifices in friends, dreams, and also dignity. But as much as you spoke about what you need to do at the get-go, there's also people that are listening that are really deep into their relationship. And like you said, you go to, whether it's a pastor, they tell you, carry on. But at the end of the day, they don't have the answers. Now, in that kind of situation, as much as you try and look for allies and support, and people they're listening to you, but they're not hearing you. In situations like that, what should someone do?
Why I said that the truth always lies within. Nobody is going to come from the outside and give you answers to what you need to do. 9 out of the 10 times, you already as an individual already know what you need to do. It's just sometimes about finding the support to help you to get to where you need to be, the strength from within to say, you know what, because that comes with it, okay, this is not working. Because sometimes it's like, oh my God, I've invested 6 years in this relationship. How do I just pick up my stuff and go? And also, don't forget that if somebody is emotionally abusive to you, although you'll be hearing all the time is you're not good enough, nobody's going to want you, you should be thankful that I'm with you. Do you know what I mean? So that has already eaten at somebody's self-worth, self-esteem. So it's not always very easy to just jump up and leave if you're in a situation like that. That's why it's important to find help. And obviously, sometimes it's not your family or your friend group is not always the best people to help you, but there are loads and loads of different organizations out there that can help you and offer you support so that you can then decide for yourself which route is best for you.
Totally right in regards to that. And I had such relationship where it can, as you said, it can alter your perception, but really and truly deep down, you know the answer. And it's all about bringing up that courage, because when you spend so many years thinking you're worthless or, but really and truly, you're not worthless and you're unappreciated, this is where you need to, like, you know, pluck up that courage. So whoever's listening in that position, urge you to listen and just pluck up that courage and get yourself out there, because at the end of the day, mental health and happiness is so key. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, definitely. And I think the most important thing, you know, if anything that I want everybody to know is that, you know what, you're not alone. No matter how bad you think your situation is, you're not the only one. You're not the first one, nor will you ever be the last one. And it was when I started doing what I'm doing that people started opening up to me, and then I thought I had bad, and then you hear other people's stories and you think, oh God, thank God that mine wasn't that bad. Do you know what I mean? But I think that there's so much power in collective healing, because sometimes all you need to know is that you're not the only one that has gone through that. And sometimes you just need somebody to say, do you know what, chin up, you'll get there, just keep going, you'll get there. The road might not be straight, but just don't give up, just keep pushing, you'll get there. And I think that that's the most important, for everybody to know that there's no straight road for everybody. All of us, our paths are not always straight, and that's okay. But don't ever feel that any situation is that's definite. No, there's always a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, a fifth chance. Just don't give up on yourself, don't give up on love, don't give up on life.
Hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed creating.
Don't forget to follow, like, share, and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our latest episode and listen to any you missed. And tune in next episode.
Take care.